start by introducing the new members on the call. So I think Paul, Piyush, would you like to introduce yourselves? Probably Divya also, and then we can go from there.
Sure, I'm happy to start from that list. So hello, everyone. I recently joined MayaData. I previously worked at CoreOS and Red Hat, and then NetApp most recently. So been doing containers and storage for a bit now. And my focus is to help with community and the marketing side of things. So I'm hoping to make life easier for new contributors, collect important info about how healthy things are, and bug Karthik and other folks about cross-posting to Litmus and getting both communities every community we're involved in working together. So look forward to working with everyone.
Awesome. I look forward to bugging you a lot.
Hey, Christopher, good to hear you as well. Welcome, Paul.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear that you guys are getting more serious about community engagement. Not that you weren't before. It's just explicitly hiring someone to help out with that is quite the taking it to the next level move.
Great. Yeah. I think Piyush, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure, Karthik. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yeah, you're audible.
Cool. So hi guys, my name is Piyush and I'm currently working with Navi Technologies. Prior to this, I was working for a consultant startup where I have used to work with various startups in Bangalore like your Fed, Cultcare, Cred, etc. Right now, since last 1.5 years, I've been pretty much involved with infrastructure and platform engineering. So we have set up the entire infrastructure using Kubernetes and automated most of the stuff on AWS. And we were looking for a chaos engineering use case, and yeah, came across Litmus, and the community was very helpful. So I think that's pretty much it from my end. Looking forward to contribute more often. I guess as depends on the time I get from Navi.
Awesome. Thanks, Piyush. I think your peers were really helpful. Next up is Divya. Divya is the co-chair of the SIG documentation team within Litmus. So yeah, Divya.
So hello everyone, I'm Divya, and as Karthik mentioned, I am the co-chair for the documentation SIG. In addition to being a part of the Litmus community, I am also part of the documentation SIG for Kubernetes, and I'm also actively working on Kubernetes and AWS open source communities. In my day job, actually, we've just started with the Kubernetes implementation in our company. So I basically got interested in chaos engineering and site reliability engineering because of my exposure in organizing various community events. And I'm looking forward to learning more by means of contributing to docs. And I guess, yeah, that's about it.
Thanks, Divya. All right, so I think we'll get started with the agenda items. So Piyush was really looking forward to hearing from you around your use cases for chaos. What are the environments like? If you can share that info, and how did you come across Litmus, and how you have felt Litmus to be? What's your experience been with it thus far? Any feedback, improvements that you would like to share?
Sure, Karthik. Yeah, so I've not prepared anything or such. I'll just share whatever we have done or I have done with the Litmus community from last fortnight, from last 2.5, 3 weeks. So we have we basically work in a fintech domain, and our primary infrastructure is deployed on Kubernetes and AWS. So we are heavily using Kubernetes and Kubernetes automations, and our infrastructure, like the security is one of the most important thing, which security being most important thing in fintech industry, like it led us to use Istio like as a service mesh, and so we could leverage some of the functionality of Istio and Istio security and related Istio features. But like when we started using Istio service mesh, like we thought like we Istio will be very helpful regarding because it supports various things like fault injection and stuff. But like once we deployed it, and we it didn't suit our architecture, because all basically when we deploy our services, we deploy every service has its own load balancer, and that load balancer is basically an AWS load balancer. So Istio, like when in microservices architecture, when one service talks to another service, it talks to that service using that load balancer and not using the internal Kubernetes DNS discovery. So like that use case was not justified by Istio. Like we wanted to inject faults, but that was not supported by Istio, because Istio at the moment only supports HTTP uh, faults, and that is also like, and that is the faults there are also very limited and only related to HTTP, and like mostly application layer faults. So basically, like we have a lot of third-party integrations in our system. So when a third-party integration goes down, we we wanted to simulate that behavior in our system. Like basically, we don't wanted to simulate. We wanted to give that capability as a platform engineer. We wanted to give that capability to the application developer to use that feature, like to inject and simulate latency into the system. So that was the use case which brought me searching uh, like to Litmus community, and like I also like explored few other tools in the market. Like there was one other chaos experiment tool which had which was not as complete as Litmus, but it provided UI and stuff, which I later found out that Litmus also provides UI for injecting faults, etc. But at Navi, what we are doing is we are building more of an abstracted way. Like we are creating an abstraction out of Litmus chaos engine and giving it to the user. So user does not know like what's happening in the background. User only knows that he wants to inject a network latency into the system for certain host or certain IP. So basically, using Litmus, we are creating more abstracted use cases for our application developers, and contributing to Litmus. Like this was the first open source contribution which I was able to like go through the code, and the community was very helpful. Like they pointed out to me what needs to be changed, and basically this was the first open source community where I contributed in 2 days. Like my PR was merged in 2 days, so that was very helpful. And whenever I came across any issues, or like I wanted to get deeper into something, or I had any doubts, like Karthik and team, like they were very helpful. And they also like we heavily use like we use Istio, and Istio like with basically there were some issues which had to be resolved, like some helper pods were not getting annotated with Istio sidecar injection as false. So all those things, like those PRs also got merged as quickly because that solved my use cases. So I'm very thankful to so looking forward to like extend more from anybody and what use case like at Navi basically.
Awesome.
Hello.
Awesome, Piyush. I think that was really insightful. Am I audible clearly?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I just had a little bit of a network issue at my side. Thanks, Piyush. I think that was very insightful. Got to know your environment a little bit better. Happy to have helped you sort of get along in your chaos engineering journey. And really good to know that you had a pleasant experience contributing to Litmus as well. So looking forward to working with you in solving more requirements and just building the community at Navi. Thanks, Piyush. That was really insightful. I think next up we have an agenda items on GitOps and chaos engineering from Sumit. Sumit, would you like to share your screen and go ahead? This will also be a SIG integrations update from Sumit, who's sharing that. I can stop my screen share.
Sure, Karthik. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay. So first thing first, last community meeting, we shared that AWS experiment. Pardon, am I audible? Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, we're able to see your screen.
Okay. So last community meeting, we share about the AWS experiment. Now that AWS experiment is alive, and you can go and look into that. The documentation is also available here as part of the documentation, and you can get started on that. There are a lot more stuff is about to come on this, but basic AWS termination is being added. I think there were few folks has asked in the community that how this is the place, and this is a code base. If anyone wanted to add more, which we are planning to do that, happy to take the PRs and merge it if it fix one of your use case. Okay, so now let's come to GitOps part, and this was the idea from the day one. So I work for a company called Intuit, and in Intuit, we have a product called Argo, which is doing the GitOps, especially on the Kubernetes. And if you could see that, you could go and look more into that. The core concept is that you have to put the deployment and metadata in a Git, and through Argo, you will go and sync it. And then whatever is your metadata and YAML files are there, they will be persist on your specific namespace. So you can look more on or read more on the Argo CD and Kubernetes GitOps. Now, what we have done is that we are using internally Argo CD for doing anything and everything for the Kubernetes deployment. So what we have done is that, as everyone know, that we have experiments, and we have the CRs, and then you have the whole setup. So right now I'm just trying to explaining that this is one of the namespace deployment where I have many pods being set it up. I have two kind of deployment. I have one application pods, which is specific to my functionality, and then I have basic Nginx demo app. Right now, I have set up no experiment here. So that's how the GitOps will come in picture. So I will just try to see if I have check in this specific code. So how I can check in my code? I can check in my code in a Git. So here is the example. I have my Git code base where I created this chaos base as one of the execution. By the way, Argo CD do provide GitOps with the various mechanism. You could read more, but I'm using customize. Customize is another way of doing that the metadata YAML to be synced. So in this scenario where right now I'm using the customize to sync the code on specific namespace. So as I was sharing that, like here, if you think about that, what this is nothing but your documentation of a CR. So I'm going and creating a CR, which is nothing but the chaos chart, which is somewhere here. So if I go and look for one of my chaos chart, it is actually pointing to this experiment.yaml and this rback.yaml. For nomenclature, we created this in this format so that it will be a little bit more clear. And it is the same image what we have actually pushed. So now what I'm going to do is that I will go and persist this specific change on my namespace. To do that, we use customize, and I have just added this chaos base to my deployment spec. And to show that, I just remove those, and now I will go and do the sync. So the code is already been checked in. So I'm just right now going and syncing that code, which I have not done that because it's a manual sync. I will go and do one sync for pod, and the moment I do that, Argo will create this custom resource available to me. I will go and sync the other one. So I have right now 2 custom resources available. And that's the core concept of the GitOps. So I'm keeping everything as a YAML, and I'm checking those in Git, and through Argo, I'm going to sync. So now this namespace have 2 custom resources available, 2 experiments available, one from the Kubernetes side, another one from AWS side. For demo purpose, I'm just picking one of the example of execution. So right now I have done one experiment. So I'm going to execute one experiment, and that experiment is a pretty standard experiment. It will go and kill one specific pod, and it will show the Kubernetes will bring the other pod. So here right now I'm getting the pods with the -w option. So any change happen, it will reflect. And here I will just keeping another tab to show that what and how the things are progressing. So let me just go and execute. So right now I have executed one of the experiment, and let's see why things are not working. So very recently in Litmus, we introduced a concept called annotation. So as I have executed the experiment, but I have not annotated my application. And again, that will go back to the same thing, which tells that, can I do GitOps here? So think about that. Right now, my actual code has this value, and right now the value is enable is false. So that means though this app is there, but I have made this annotation equal to false. So any of the chaos experiment I wanted to run, it won't be executed. So let me go and sync this, which is nothing but a GitOps. It will go and fetch that value, and it will persist this value as true. So now I have done GitOps for my application, where I have created a specific annotation. Now I will go and execute the same. And these tests are already available as part of the chaos chart. So now here you could see that the moment I started that, the runner pod has come up, and the runner pod will go and start executing the delete pod. So before doing that, let's see here what's the so right now this experiment is going, and you could already see that it already started killing a specific pod where we have annotated, and it has finished. And here you could see that the logs has been mentioned, and then the test is passed. So net, if someone wanted to do the GitOps and they wanted to be part of a pipeline, it's pretty much possible. Those who wanted to participate in game day, or those who wanted to participate for the chaos experiment for the larger group, they can annotate their application and be participate using cron job or whatever the game day schedule. Or if they don't want, they are not ready, they can just make their application annotate false and ensure that it's not there. How this thing happen is we have created in Litmus another thing called custom annotation, and this was the request I have raised I think when we started on the Litmus that we need something like that. So right now we have added this custom annotation as part of the operator setup, and this custom annotation is the one which we are using here, and this one will be controlled by a flag called annotation check on your custom CRs. So this is right now we have not merged that, but yeah, we will share that stuff in our Git repo. And our Git repo is here. We have the Argo and Litmus and all the other stuff related to. So I think I'm done. And how it will be visualized. It will be visualized like that. You keep the stuff in the Git. Everything is in a Git. Through Argo CD, you will sync. Right now we have this specific architecture where we are executing from a specific namespace, and you can run from the within namespace also. So service owner and cluster use case, and we can trigger that. Any questions?
Great. I think that was awesome, Sumit. Folks can basically annotate their applications and ensure that they lend themselves to chaos, or they can prevent it on the fly. I think Argo CD is a pretty nifty integration along with Litmus, just the way we saw Argo workflows being integrated. Thanks, Sumit. That was very insightful. We have a question around that from Shomo. Can we auto sync using Argo?
Yes. So Argo has two concepts. There is a one for demo purpose. I was just showing that so that it's visible. But if you enable the auto sync, then the moment you make the check-in, you can get this thing automatically. So enable auto sync. Then the moment it persists in the Git, it will be immediately reflect. We wanted to do controlled way. We don't want it to do the auto, but it's possible.
All right. So the question that I was asking Sumit, I think Sumit is yet to join, is if Litmus Argo, if the Argo CD is capable of doing auto deployments to several clusters from a single deployment, and it is capable of doing that. I wanted to hear from Sumit if that was the use case that they were using. So probably once he comes in, we'll try and ask him about that. The next item on the agenda was the update around SIG docs, the direction that we are taking and what we've been doing thus far from Divya. So I think Divya, you can go ahead.
Okay, thanks Karthik, and hello everyone, and a very good day. Hope everyone's doing fine. And as previously introduced, I'm one of the co-chairs / leads for SIG docs on LitmusChaos. So post the last sync-up call that we had, a couple of us, namely Karthik, Jayesh, and myself, we got together and we've been laying down the bare bones for the special interest group related to documentation for LitmusChaos. So one of our primary focus areas was to basically narrow down a schedule to meet up every week as a special interest group, and how to be as accommodating as possible when having this meeting in the very first place. Because if, as of now, uh, we have this meetup call on at 6:30 on a IST timings on a Monday evening, and we narrowed down this timing based on the the time zone of the folks that were joining. So both all of us are based out of India. So we this also is very accommodating for the European time zone, but I think going ahead, maybe we might need to alter it if we have a lot of contributions and folks from the American time zones join in, because it might be a little bit early for them. But that was one of the challenges that we've had. But right now, given the number of contributors, and given the folks who are joining the calls on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, we've narrowed down the timings to be 6:30 IST on a Monday evening. In addition, we also wanted to focus on a charter for the special interest group, which I will be walking y'all through. I'm going to paste the link quickly and share the screen. So just a second. So this is the charter for the SIG documentation, and just a second. Right. So I hope everyone's able to see my screen. Okay. I'll take that as a yes.
Yeah, Divya, we can see.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So after like a lot of deliberation, we came up with this charter that clearly lists the goals and non-goals for the documentation as special interest groups. Most of it is self-explanatory. I don't really have to go through each and every one of them, but the ones that are specific to what me and Jayesh are focusing on, I'll explain it in a bit of detail. So as documentation goes, technically we could be the best out there, but when we are looking at technical documentation, we also need to process for the qualitative checks, and need to have a set of standards when when actually writing this documentation down. So Jayesh and me and Karthik have focused on over the last couple of weeks on getting a set of standards in place while writing down or contributing for this technical document towards this technical documentation. And I think as of now we don't have that standards documentation in place, but that's one of the things we're aiming for. So that is one thing that is a priority on our lists. We are also majorly looking at increasing the number of contributors to picking up the issues for documentation. I mean, as a project, we definitely are, but even with the documentation, we are, looking at increasing contributions. So Karthik has, taken a lot of onus in this regard and created a lot of good first issues that we possibly could not advertise, market about. and that's another focus area that we've been talking about consistently in the last couple of meetings. And one of the things that we've clearly decided was non-goal in is creating the release notes for project releases. We will be curating it from the other 6 maintainers, and the contributing doc that we are preparing right now for the documentation sake will be specific to our document for our sake alone. Obviously, we can assist with the contributor documentation for other 6, but the overall contribution doc that we are preparing will be for our sake. We have not yet actually merged the contribution documentation. It's still in progress, so I have that up here as well. But we've not merged it as far as I know. Just let me, okay.
Yeah, I think it's still under review.
Yeah, it's still under review as of now. So there are a couple of changes that have been suggested by Akram, who had joined the SIG call day before yesterday. So that was about it with respect to the SIG chapter. The way forward would mostly be, further strengthening the set of guidelines that we have around contribution to documentation, and listing down some good first issues to increase the contribution, but that would be more specific for the upcoming Hacktoberfest. And that's also been one of the key talking points that we've had the last call. And the main thing is, vetting for the feasibility of the migration from Docusaurus. So Docusaurus is the software as a service, documentation as a service tool that we are using. And the current documentation resides in the version 1.xx version. So there is a new version out in the market, but it's in the alpha state, if I'm not mistaken. So we are looking at the feasibility and checking for how exactly the migration is to happen whenever it needs to. So that's something that's on our list as well. So from my perspective, that's all I had. I'm open to questions if there's anything that anybody likes to ask.
Great. Thanks, Divya. I think documentation 6 is one of the first few special interest groups that we've sort of got more progress on. Integrations and observability being the other ones. So thanks for leading that and sharing the update about what we're doing there. The next item on the agenda, if there are no questions, is about the compatibility matrix in Litmus. So I've created an issue around it. So I'll probably just show that very quickly. So one of the things that we received as feedback from the community was what are the runtimes that we support, especially for experiments such as network chaos or resource stress, or CPU memory or disk stress. There are multiple ways of doing it. If you want to use a pure Kubernetes native way of doing it, you use the exec APIs to go ahead and enter the pod and do the target processes. But that would be an obtrusive way of doing it, though we support it. The other way is to basically run external containers, enter the network namespace of the target containers, or enter the module, control the C group based resource allocation for the target containers from external containers, those that run with netadmin or sysadmin capabilities. So this will help us to take out the base images out of the question and sort of do the chaos successfully against them. but that would also mean for us to be able to be interoperable with different runtimes, use the right APIs, Docker, Containerd, CRI-O. Similarly, there are also certain challenges in running some experiments on some platforms. For example, there were a couple of issues reported against MicroKTS, and we got some dedicated effort from one of our community members to certify AKS as a platform recently. So, and a lot of questions on Slack that you might see are around how we are supported on different platforms. So in other words, there is a need for us as a community to establish interoperability very clearly and put that out in some kind of a compatibility matrix. So that's something that we are looking to drive from the SIG testing group led by Shubham and Udit. And we can eventually have that listed or displayed on the E2B dashboard that we have. In order to do that, we need to be able to spend a considerable amount of time and also resources, be cloud resources or hardware within data centers that are maintained by MayaData, for example, right now. So we could get started or we could get to the beginnings of some kind of a compatibility matrix based on user feedback. So this issue has been created so that users who are already using Litmus can share their comments about what is the platform they are employing Litmus on and what are the experiments that they're executing with what runtimes and if possible, what base images they have been using, etc. That gives us a good idea of how it is being used and what is really in demand, and maybe focus our efforts in developing the experiments and framework to align with that particular environment components. So this is something that we wanted to bring out today in the call. So please feel free to put a comment here around how you are deploying Litmus, what kind of environment you are deploying it into, what is the cloud platform, or what is the container runtime that you're using, what are the Kubernetes versions. Any such information is useful. We will arrive at some kind of a compatibility matrix that we will present on Slack, and we will iterate from there. So that's something we want to discuss.
Hey, Karthik, can I ask something?
Sure. Yes, Sumit.
Yeah, so you know that like I'm not very much aware about that what all the metrics, but we do publish a lot of execution metrics as part of outcome of our execution. So
okay.
So is this like you wanted to do it for each different technologies, or is it each kind of experiment? Like what do you mean by compatibility? Because you run the test on a specific technology or OS, right?
True. So there are a few things here. This issue is probably not very detailed in mentioning and laying that out, but you have different host operating systems, which are the ones that you build your Kubernetes cluster on. And then there are different container runtimes that you might have used as part of the cluster. You might be using Docker or CRI-O or Containerd. And you might also be running this, on a particular OS with a particular runtime on a particular cloud platform. So all the platform-related experiments that we have today, like disk loss, for example, which make use of the platform API, we will get a good idea of where it's being used, and what we need to build it for, where our community is basically using Litmus today. This is more about the environment, Sumit, rather than the integrations in terms of like other abstractions running Litmus experiments like Argo workflows, or maybe triggering it from Jenkins, or that is also some kind of interoperability. But this issue is addressing it more from a environment perspective, the deployment environment where you're running Litmus, so to say.
Okay.
All right. So with that, I think we've hit the agenda items mostly. We have a couple of community members, happy to see them here. Carl Sharp, who's from QVC, and we have Ramiro again, who's joined us today. Would you like to share some thoughts? Carl, introduce yourself maybe and give some idea of how you're using Litmus.
Detected at the front door.
Hey, how are you? This is Carl Sharp.
DevOps engineer at QVC. So we're currently in the process of standing up some Kubernetes clusters, both on-prem and in Azure. So as a part of our pipeline, initially we want to get familiar with Litmus to, perform chaos engineering tests, on our microservices. And then, the ultimate plan is to, incorporate this into our CI pipeline as a part of, one of the stages.
Awesome.
So that's.
Thanks, Carl. And Carl is also someone who is familiar with Spinnaker. So I think just like Argo CD, it would be really cool to have Litmus running as a stage in a Spinnaker pipeline. Really looking forward to working with you on that, Carl. Hi, Ramiro. I think Ramiro, as you all know, is the founder of Octeto. And we have listed Litmus as a template on Octeto Cloud. We want to share any experiences of how the Octeto community is finding Litmus, Ramiro.
Yeah, hi, everyone. Good to be here. Nice meeting all the new ones. From our perspective, one of the most interesting things that I like about Litmus is because it just fits with the Kubernetes model so well. It's very easy to just build it together with your applications and with your dev environments in our community. We are big into the idea of pre-created, pre-configured dev environments for everyone. So our community has been using Litmus that way, where they bundle their dev tools, the Litmus configuration, the experiments together. So the developers can just one click, deploy the app, deploy the experiment, and very easily run the test without even them having to understand a lot of the internals of Litmus. That's something that I've been getting a lot of really good feedback on how you can get a bigger part of your team to kind of get into this chaos testing practice if they don't have to understand the entire thing from day one. You can give them a script that just says start, test, and this is the test that's gonna, create experiment. Let's say kill your pods or restart or like delete a service, whatever. It just makes it easier to adopt, and that's what we're seeing so far. We've got like 30, 40 deployments of Litmus on Octeto, or like dev environments with Litmus on Octeto. So it's very exciting. If anyone wants to try it out, please reach out. Happy to talk more.
Awesome. That's great news. Thanks, Ramiro, for enabling that. Really looking forward to adding more features that we could use in Octeto Cloud, more experiments that can be done at a namespace scope. We have some message from Naveen on Divya. Link is not accessible. So this is regarding the charter and the SIG docs meeting link, I suppose, Naveen. I'll probably share that on Slack, or we can share that on Slack once we are done with the meeting. We have a last a few minutes, and we just released 1.8 yesterday. Thanks to all the great contributions and suggestions on what we need to do here in this release.
So,
yeah,
I wanted to say something. I'm reading these notes. That blast radius thing, the pods affected percentage, that was actually something that a team in Argo asked for, and I turned them down because I said, I don't want you to. Basically what they wanted was they wanted some assurance that chaos would not take their service down completely, and I'm like, that's the risk you run when you do chaos, right? You have to accept that risk. So I turned them down because of that. So I think it's funny that you guys eventually implemented it anyway. That's why I didn't bring it up because of that, because I'm like, I don't want the teams to think that they can run chaos safely because those are contradictions. The whole point is your service has to be resilient enough that it can handle it, not that the chaos framework is going to try to hold your hand. But I still think it's funny that I'm guessing somebody else asked for that as well, and that's why it's there now.
You're right, Christopher. I think we had folks from FY Networks. I think Suhrud is not on the call today, but I think they were pretty interested in having this feature where they wanted to control the number of replicas they can inject chaos on within a deployment. So that was something that got added. And we also have other enhancements. So some good news is we now support network chaos on Containerd and CRIO, something that was long pending community request. So that's sort of added, and we've also added new resource stress libraries that can do it from external containers. You can read a host of enhancements. We'll also be pushing out a blog explaining some of these features, which are not straightforward. So thanks, shout out to Piyush, Shantanu, and a lot of other folks on this call who were instrumental in giving us good requirements and contributions to enable this release. And what's coming in this subsequent release, that's 1.9. We might do some 1.8.x releases in between, is improved Litmus probes. So we had a demo of Litmus probes in the last community sync-up call from Shubham. So this is helping you to do your hypothesis in a declarative way. You use your chaos engine to say, I want this command output to be indicative of my service health, or you can hit an HTTP endpoint, verify the availability of a certain Kubernetes resource, or extract out the status or some spec element from the Kubernetes resource to indicate that all is well. And you can do that at the beginning and end of the experiments or through the experiment continuously. That's also supported. We are supporting continuous mode of execution, and that's gone into 1.8. In 1.9, we will also support the entire CRUD operations on K8s probe and allow for chaining of probe artifacts. So you might get result out of one probe. You might want to use that as an input condition for another probe that you're defining subsequently. So that's something we are enabling. And we will add more support for resource chaos on Containerd and CRIO. Right now, it uses a pod exec mode, as we're trying to make it use non-pod exec mode, try to run it from external containers, use the C group utilities, and try and target the POS containers mapped to a Kubernetes pod to be able to get this resource chaos done. We'll also be investing more time in stability tests for experiments. So this is also tied to the compatibility matrix we spoke about. So we will try and add some of these cases into the E2E, and they'll find their way into the dashboard. And just had a brief chat with Piyush on beginning HTTP chaos, where you can simulate connection traces, different error codes that you would see. And this is something we will be thinking about, and probably come up with some kind of a tech preview or a POC kind of a feature. Of course, increased documentation and chaos instrumented dashboards will be coming from the SIG-docs and SIG observability folks. So that's where we are. I think that is a wrap. Thanks for joining. And again, apologies for what happened today. We got Zoom bombed, like Christopher rightly mentioned. I think we will take more precautions and have increased measures in place before the next call. All right.
Yeah, I did a little digging about that during the remainder of this meeting, and it said that oftentimes what people do is they just Google for like the zoom.us URL and find, a random URL to do it. So it's possible that the URL, you might want to, change the guidance on the website to say, to get the community meeting link, please subscribe to the Slack channel or something like that, and not have it publicly on the website anymore.
Makes sense, Christopher. I think we'll take that feedback. And I think that I heard something from Ajesh about waiting rooms. Seems to be a good feature. So we'll probably start doing that. Thanks, everyone. We will post, I think, whatever demos were done. I think we do have a recording of that, hopefully, and we will put that up on YouTube and share it on Slack. And yeah, keep the conversations going on the Slack channel. You can create issues for any bugs that you face or any requirements that you see. I will be happy to sort of prioritize that. The milestones items for 1.9 will also be shared on Slack, so you can take a look at that and comment as well. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
Thanks all. Good seeing chaos on the meeting itself.
Yeah, thanks all.
We saw chaos on the meeting today.
Everyone, bye-bye.